Hi guys, and welcome back to the Fast Turks podcast. It's season 2, episode 3 today, recording date of May 9th, 2023, and we've got some hot topics today. We're looking back at this weekend's action at Catalunya, what we're going to call Rinaldi Gate, and also the news from Tom Sykes moving away from Pacetti. So let's dive straight in though with the main headline, which is of course Bahattin's first win in the Supersport class. So first and foremost, a huge congratulations to Bahattin. 2 podium finishes. So he'd set himself a career best of a third on the Saturday, and then he goes and tops that with a first on the Sunday. So yeah, huge congratulations to him. So well done. Jem, our boy got his first win.
Yeah, massively happy for him, man. That was a track he did really well at. It was, like he had that sort of, it's a slow start to last season on the MV where I think he was just finding his feet in the class, new class, much more powerful bike compared to the R300 Yamaha that he was riding the season before. And from about the halfway point, he definitely started to really find his way in that class. And I went to Catalunya last year and saw that he was not far off, obviously Agata, sort of class of his own, but he wasn't, he was sort of mixing it with the top leading group. And then he got a 7th in race 1 and a 5th in race 2. So I was quietly confident for him in this race. Did I think he was going to win? Probably not. But when I saw he went quickest in FP1, I was like, ooh, this is looking... I mean, if he's quick off the bat from FP1, this is looking promising. I certainly think... I certainly thought that he might have a podium in him. Because, it's a weird one with practices. You get FP1 and it can really change between FP1 to FP2. And then Superpole comes along. And in fact, he didn't have a great qualifying. He qualified 9th in Superpole. But you could see straight away, once the lights went green, he was like, no, I'm getting to the front. He had the pace to get to the front. He wasn't hanging around. And it wasn't like desperation passes either. This is what I really like about the way... this is what I like about the way he rides. Despite his age, his racecraft has come along leaps and bounds since like some of the sort of mistake-strewn seasons of, say, his R300 days, where there was like always that impetuous moment where he'd go for a pass that wasn't really on. But now it's like he's in a very short space of time. It feels like he's really come on and matured, and the racecraft is there, and he's picking his passes. He's not going for like, really desperate lunges, which can't really be the same. I've got to say, Manzi was right. I thought, I don't know about you. I know that the Yam on that track seems to struggle a bit in a straight line. And obviously, as Top Ruck supporters, I'm certainly sympathetic to that. That being said, that man looks like every time he goes for a pass, it looks like he's on the cusp of some sort of contact. His passes always seem to be right on the verge of what is acceptable.
Well, there was one move that he put on Bahatttin, I think, with 3 laps to go in race 2, which I thought he kind of that Manzi had kind of stepped over the limit of what was acceptable a little bit for me. And I don't know if I'm being sort of, especially sensitive, because obviously the move was on Bahatttin, but he put a quite saucy move on him with 3 to go. I think there was a bit of fender bashing. I think it was into turn 1, I want to say, or maybe turn 3. I can't remember, but
I'll tell you why you can't remember, because it happened more than once. It was in race 1, and he was desperate to... Obviously, they were fighting. It was Manzi, Bahattin, and Schrotter, Bahattin's teammate, and they were all fighting and jockeying for position. I think the way that race worked out, Bahattin maybe went a little bit early with the strong pace, he led for some laps, and then obviously Bulega repassed him, and then Bulega had the pace to just gap them and get away and, take another very, sort of well fought victory. But yeah, in that race, Manzi was so desperate. He, like I said, but this is nothing new. This is something I've always noticed with him. He was the same when he was on the Triumph last year. Some of his passing moves are really circumspect at time, and I think, mate, did you really need to go in that hard? Like, you're on the verge of seemingly on the verge of making contact, and I think he did make contact on at least one or two occasions throughout the weekend.
Definitely
specifically
three to go.
with Bahattin.
Yeah, 3 to go on Sunday, and I remember I was sort of like, oh, is he about to exit? It wasn't just like it wasn't like a huge whack, but it was enough of a whack that for a moment I was like, are they both about to go down here? It was a slightly hairy one, but thankfully he was able to kind of, I think it was on the final lap, but I did manage to just start to sort of drop him. And there wasn't really any danger by the final lap that he was going to sort of either A, find a way past, or B, take them both out in an attempt to find a way past.
Are you referring to race 2 there?
Race 2, yeah, race 2.
The way that worked out is Bahatttin just rode a really well thought out defensive last lap. So he was just covering all the lines, hitting all the braking spots. Because obviously sometimes when you go defensive, you can, depending on how kind of, I suppose, when you're a rider, how tight you are, and obviously bearing in mind, he's going for a win here. So he's in unknown territory in terms of pressure. He was hitting all his brake markers and not running wide despite covering the defensive line, which sometimes can compromise, obviously, as you know, the exit out of a corner. But Manzi was actually on him right up until the last. It's just that he never got close enough even to put a move on by his sort of crazy standards.
Maybe it was the last half of that lap then, but I do remember he sort of had a bit of breathing room, and there was a couple of occasions where I think it was coming into the left-hander off of the end of the back straight that Bahatttin sort of like really covered all the way over to the left-hand side of the track, sort of like going out onto the marbles. And I think, he obviously hadn't glanced over his shoulder at that point, and I don't know if he realised that he had enough distance between him and Manzi to not need to do that, because there was especially towards the second half of the final lap, he had enough pace, I felt, that he didn't need to be riding defensively anymore. He could just take his normal lines.
But you can't blame him for that. You can't.
No, of course not, because I noticed that he didn't glance over his shoulder. And obviously, he hasn't been past the pit board to get a Manzi,
which is the correct thing to do as well.
Which is the correct thing to do. Which
you should never be glancing over your shoulder,
unless you're on a straight. I guess there's time on a straight to glance over your shoulder, especially if it's last lap. Because again, by taking a defensive line, he may have been compromising exit speed, and then and ultimately then compromising lap time, and then letting Manzi catch him where he may not have needed to ride in that style, and he could have just disappeared. So, but I don't remember him glancing over his shoulder. These guys are probably good enough that they can tell by the sound of the bike behind them how far away the bike is. So, it was a like you said, it was a quite mature sort of performance from him. There was none of that kind of manic Manzi-esque kind of dive bomb passing attempts. Whenever he did pass anyone, it was like a clean maneuver. Really, really impressive. Again, at the start of the weekend, I wouldn't have had him pegged for a win. I would have thought with the straight line speed of the MV that he'd maybe been challenging for his first podium, especially his kind of tail end of last season and towards the start of this season, especially, seems to have gone from strength to strength. So, and Catalunya with the two straights, especially the main start finish straight being such a long straight. We know Catalunya to be a power track, as Bautista proved in the main class this weekend. But yeah, so it was a pleasant surprise. It was a surprise, but it was a very pleasant surprise.
Yeah.
So yeah, huge congratulations to him.
But it's also good to see that the MV guys seem to be quite evenly matched, because, like I said, Schrotter's got, he's got good pedigree despite not being a superstar of Moto2. He was a good, solid Moto2 rider that threatened to win on occasions and never did. So obviously coming to a softer bike, and he's had, obviously Moto2 runs a Triumph triple engine. So it's not going to be, it's a 765 triple. So the MV's an 800 triple. So there's not going to be, I don't think, characteristically wise, a huge difference in. I think he's probably quite adept at riding a triple and understands how they work.
Yeah, there's probably some crossover there.
Yeah, it definitely has. And Bahattin said that from the very start when I saw him interviewing when he joined MV and did some tests. He said, I've got a lot to go in the corners. I can improve. But he says it's really nice having a bike that fires out of a corner with a decent amount of torque, and it's got the top end to go as well. Because obviously in the R3 Cup, the Yamaha, I believe, is 300cc or 350, and then the Kawasaki's are about 400 or 450cc. So the Yamaha has always historically been a slower bike in a straight line in the R3 Cup, or the super, what do they call it, the Super Sport 300 class.
Yeah.
So he said it was a really nice, pleasant surprise and a change of sort of tack to have a bike that was a bit of a rocket in a straight line, in that he admitted it was down to him to make the best out of it, or get the best out of it in the corners, which it seems he's found something ever since about halfway through last season. And he's just now kind of bit by bit, block by block, building on what he has. And now it looks like, because he had the pace in Assen as well, but obviously that Van Stralen crash paid to any hopes he had of getting a good result. So the fact that Schrotter's there to sort of, to give him, not that Nicky Tooley was a mug, because obviously Tooley's a very good rider as well. He was obviously the teammate last year. I'm just a bit scared now that if MV continue like an upward trajectory, the Ducati look quick in a straight line as well. Now I'm thinking, are they going to obviously massage the rules so that they sort of peg those two bikes back a bit, which I wouldn't, in theory, have a problem with. You don't want to see a bike that's obviously going to be I don't think it's much quicker than every other bike, but the MV definitely is one of the quicker bikes on that Super Sport grid, for sure.
It is, and he's got a clear straight line speed advantage. I think if we draw a parallel between the Super Sport and the Superbike class, I think there is, in terms of if we're talking about the MV, I feel like it's probably got an equally strong straight line speed advantage as something like the Ducatis in the Superbike class, but compared to the opposition. But then through the corners, where the Ducati of, let's say, Bautista and Rinaldi is perhaps not quite as strong in terms of ultimate mid-speed corner as maybe the Yamaha, I feel like the Yamaha in the Superbike class is, the Ducati in the Superbike class is cornering abilities versus straight line speed. It's more rounded in terms of, whereas the MV, you could see that there were some corners where Manzi was visibly quicker mid corner, whereas typically with the Ducati, the Yamaha may be a little bit quicker, or the Kawasaki may be a little bit quicker mid corner, but it's not necessarily always a visible difference. But the MV seems to be losing out, like 1-2 mile an hour corner speed at the apex compared to the other bikes, which is, as I say, it's visible. So I think there'll be certain tracks where the MV will be very strong. Your Catalunyas, and similar.
Mostit was very strong last year.
Yeah, Mostit will be strong. So anywhere where you've kind of got these 900-kilometer long back straights, it's going to be strong. I think when you go to the slightly tighter tracks, it's going to be it's going to be a more even fight. So there's going to be tracks which suit it, and there's going to be tracks where it's not as strong. So as I said, I don't think it's quite a straight parallel with the Ducati in the superbike class, because the Ducati is a better performer mid corner, comparatively to the MV, I feel. So with the comparatively good sort of cornering ability of the Ducati, plus then the bonkers straight line speed advantage, maybe lopping 250 off of it, and then still, despite having 250 revs lopped off at the top end at Catalunya, absolutely just pissing off into the distance. Whereas
probably
Ducati, the MV was, at no point this weekend was either Schrotter or Bahattin in any danger of just sodding off. They were strong, and they were, they were clearly, both riders, in fact, were, it was a great rider machine combination. But they weren't the outright dominant package that Ducati and Bautista are. So I personally don't think that there's any danger this season, at least, of any kind of performance handicap being passed down to the MVs. I don't think.
Right. Be interesting to see, because I think it's a well balanced class at the moment. I mean, you in motorsport, the thing is, you're never going to have perfect parity. There's just too much. There's too many variables and too many factors at play. It's only when I think you start to get I mean, Red Bull, for example, in Formula One, it's they're saying somehow with their DRS open, they're able to extract so much more extra speed compared to the other teams. What is this sort of what is this witchcraft that's going on? That Adrian Newey is. What is it that Adrian Newey is able to extract that from this design that others aren't? When it gets to that point, now I'm like, there's something needs to be done, because you don't want to see. I don't mind where a bike has a particular strength, and to be fair to someone like Bautista, he is able somehow to sort of become one with it and really, really hit that sweet spot where the bike's the best on the grid, and his skill level, despite whatever I may think of him in comparison to, say, Toprak, he is able to really get the very, very best from that bike. Everything's it's one of those like stars of a line moments where his riding style, the bike, his lack of weight, it all has come into one. It's all converged into one pretty unbeatable package. I do think things are going to change slightly when we head to the tighter tracks, Doningtons, Manicours, where the Yamaha and Toprak. I mean, let's be honest. If you take Bautista out of the equation, so like segueing now into World Superbike, if you take Bautista out of the equation, Toprak's essentially got a triple win. If you removed Bautista, he's got 3 second places. Now, year on year, he's improved his performances at that track. He has never historically gone well there. Even when he joined Yamaha in 2020, I mean, he smashed himself to pieces in the Sunday warm-up, so he couldn't even race on the Sunday. So he only raced on the Saturday. And Van der Mark outpaced him pretty much the entire weekend. He just doesn't like the place very much. It doesn't seem to suit his style. And to be fair, it doesn't really suit the Yamaha, I think. The Yamaha, I've always found it always struggles. Like, it seems to struggle on sustained high speed, fully banked over corners. So, very long sweeping.
Catalunya.
Exactly. So it just doesn't. Whereas Toprak, I think from last year, he just learnt so much and thought, I think he admitted it. He said, Bautista's gone. I'm not worrying about him. I'm worrying about all the rest. And he played the waiting game.
Right. Not sure what happened there. Technical glitch. Apparently the podcast decided it wanted to randomly stop recording. So I think we were talking about if Bautista wasn't there, Toprak would have basically done a triple.
Yes.
And how traditionally the Yamaha doesn't do especially well at Catalunya. It doesn't seem to favour these high speed, fully cranked over, high speed bends. So yeah, it's a mixed bag, that track, because obviously you've got turn 3, which is very much like that, and then you've kind of got that sort of chicane up the hill, which is kind of fairly cranked over, and you've got the turn onto the back straight, which is the same, and you've got obviously there's a lot of that, but then you've got a few big sort of braking zones there as well, which obviously suit Toprak style. So yeah, tricky one. Yeah, for me, we've spoken about this a lot so far this season, but I think in terms of raw riding ability, I would say that Bautista's probably out of that sort of trinity of Bautista, Toprak, and Ray. I think Bautista's probably third. Ray, well, I mean, he's back to back championships. Say all you need to know about his riding skill. Toprak is obviously, is Toprak, and he's. I was talking about this with your brother actually the other day on the phone. There's no other person who I've ever watched on two wheels where, with 100% confidence, every single time when it comes to entering a braking zone, where you've come into the braking zone at the same speed, side by side, that when you get on the brakes, you just know that Toprak's going to win that braking battle.
Yeah.
Every time. It's not like, I want to say every time, let's say 99 times out of 100.
A lot of the times, yes. Yeah.
The unbelievable percentage of times he's going to win that battle, and never seen anything like it. He's so dominant on the brakes. That level of dominance on the brakes, I've just not seen before. So
I've only ever seen Marc Marquez like that in MotoGP. He has that ability to get the thing all squirrely. It looks all out of control. He's the last of the late breakers. But Toprak's the only guy in super bikes that I've seen do that.
If he ever does make the move to MotoGP, I'm looking forward to seeing that Marquez versus Toprak battle of the late breakers.
Yeah,
that'll be something.
I mean, I think it's worth mentioning now, obviously, isn't it? Because there seemed to be the consensus is that they're saying he was a bit of a disappointment in the recent Jerez test on the M1 MotoGP bike after 2 days. And what was it? His quickest time was 0.7 down on Cal Crutchlow, who is the Yamaha test rider, and something like 1.5 seconds or so down on Danny Pedrosa, who shout out to him. He just did a wild card at Jerez in MotoGP and got a 6th on the KTM. I mean, I get that, but nobody wins anything for testing. And another thing is, why would you risk with a live championship? Why would you try to risk going quickly, smashing yourself to bits, smashing the bike to bits, to prove that you can be really, really quick? I mean, I just don't get that. I don't see how you can write someone off without actually giving them the chance in the first place. Also, the Yamaha is not obviously the best bike at the moment by any stretch. It's Japanese dominance seems to have waned. It's all it's Ducati, Aprilia, the two Italian firms, and then the Austrian firm in KTM. They've taken some wins this season, especially in the sprint races. So, I get that maybe there was more I probably expected more of him, but then I'm trying to frame it and think, you just can't look into one single test and go, he's not quick enough. The guy is a proven winner in every category he's been in. I mean, to frame his talent, in 2014, Bahattin Sofuoğlu entered him as a wild card into the last race of what was then, because I think it's a discontinued class now, the stock 600 class. So It's like, the like Supersport Light, basically.
Mm.
That was at Manicure, final race of their season, and he entered Toprak into that. Toprak in 2015 would have been what? He
What's
still
now,
would have been a teen.
26?
He's 26 now, so he would have been, maybe just coming out of his teen years, if that. No, sorry, a lot younger than that. What am I talking about? So he would have been a teenager, maybe 17 at the time?
2015, did you say?
Yeah, 2015,
Yeah, so
2014, end of 2014.
So he would have been, what, 16?
If that. He won that race on his debut on a bike he'd never ridden before, riders he's never ridden against, and a track he's never seen. And then he went on to dominate that class as a full-time competitor and won it at Cantor in 2015. He's just like most riders, with the exception of Marc Marquez, who's the only rider I can remember in recent memory. Not even Rossi could manage that in his first season. Went up to the top class and won it in his debut year. That's the only rider I can remember doing that. That's not the standard. That's the outlier. So it might take you 1, maybe 2 years to find your feet. I think Toprak should be afforded that. The issue that I think he has is that there's so much good, raw, younger talent that's more suited perhaps coming up through the junior, from Moto 3 and Moto 2, that he might be seen now as somebody who spent a lot of time on a superbike as a bit of a risk, compared to someone like maybe a Pedro Acosta, who's like seen as the next Marquez. I don't know. I think it's a difficult one. I understand both sides, but I think to write somebody off based on one test is a little bit disingenuous, as if to say he doesn't have it. You haven't even put him amongst the other guys.
I'd say to run a few tests at a few different tracks, number one. Number two, then also giving him that seat time to adjust to the bike. Because like you said, he's not ridden prototyped bikes very often. So that's going to be unfamiliar to him. But someone who's achieved what he's achieved in the sport so far, who's come into Superbike and upended Jonathan Ray's, era of absolute dominance, hasn't done that by being mediocre. It's a tricky one because at 26, if he's going to make the transition, and if he's going to need a season or two to adjust, he's going to probably want to make that transition sooner rather than later.
100%.
I'd say, it seems like he's probably. I don't think we've had any more news since the weekend, but I think there was an interview with Paul Denning, and I think he said that he was impressed with the offer that Yamaha had put forward to Toprak to keep him at the team. So I think he was kind of indicating that he thought that Toprak would probably accept the offer that's on the table.
But the whispers are that he has rejected it, Toprak.
Yeah, we'll see where it goes. Obviously, we don't know the details of what.
And then even more bizarre,
the links to BMW. Yeah,
BMW. Like, why would you go there? Like, you've seen how Scott Redding has basically committed to career suicide. Nobody's doing anything on that. I mean, Gerloff, to be fair to him, had a fairly decent outing on the private Bonovo bike. But he likes that track. It's one of those where he went very well there last year as well on the GRT Yamaha. That obviously Agatha and Gardner are now riding. So I just don't see. I mean, that would be for whatever money. Toprak, if you're watching, don't go to BMW, mate. That's just not going to work.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
Yapma.
No, I mean, in some like weird universe where Bautista retires potentially at the end of the season, because I think he's sort of made some murmurs about he wants to spend more time at home with the kids and stuff.
But he's signed for one more year. He'll be there in 2024.
Yeah, and then at that point, that would then mean that he would be, so Toprak would then be 28, nudging up towards 29 before a seat became available on the Ducati, assuming that Ducati is still then the dominant force by then. To be honest, I think in 2 seasons' time, it will. You never know, because sometimes there's just, whether it's in Formula One or whether it's on the bikes, someone engineers a machine that just leapfrogs everyone. But the momentum, it seems like the engineering momentum is with Ducati at the moment. They seem to be making the strides with the bike. They took what was already a dominant bike last season and made it even more dominant this season.
More dominant, yeah.
Don't think we've seen anything from Yamaha this year that's indicated that they're suddenly about to start closing that gap, or from Kawasaki for that matter.
Well, I'll tell you what I did notice, which it was pleasing to see, was that Toprak seemed to be jumping off that final bend, that the one where they bank right, leading on to start finish. The bike was really hooking up well there, and that's usually a Yamaha weak point. Like I remember last year at Estoril, he lost the race because of that, where it just didn't want to hook up. And it then wheelied when he tried to gas it up, when he had it up, when he straightened it up. It was jumping off the last corner really well. And he was even in fact, able to defend against Rinaldi on certain occasions, where before...
I think there's occasions where I could defend against Rinaldi, but we'll come on to that shortly.
Our man, Micheal.
Yes. We'll come back to Rinaldi. Go ahead.
But yeah, going back to BMW, the only way that works is if somehow BMW have a secret MotoGP, project that is going to be the nuts, and somehow manage to twist Toprak's arm and say, do a year in Superbike, we'll get the MotoGP bike ready, and you'll go in as a factory rider. That's another thing I think is an issue here, that, Kenan Sofuoğlu, he is known for being a hard taskmaster. I dare say sort of the Daniel Levy of bike negotiation. He drives a hard bargain, that man. And obviously Toprak entrusts him. He is the reason Toprak is there. For better, whatever your view of Kenan, for better or worse, he will not have his guy being mugged off, because it's like him being mugged off. It's through association. When Toprak went to do the Suzuka 8 Hours of Kawasaki in 2019, imagine being flown halfway around the world, compete in the qualifying sessions, and then to be told that the slower guy than you is going to do the race and you're going to sit on the sidelines. I mean, that is a massive, massive disrespect. And it's funny because the Japanese are all about respect. And I feel that Kenan is like that. Like, if you're going to sign my guy, you're going to do it where I will be happy. And if I'm not happy, if I feel that you're mugging me off or you're mugging my guy off, I won't stand for that. And I think with him, he went to Moto2 and essentially failed. I mean, I don't think the team was up to much. He also lost his dad that year. But I think he's wary of Toprak's confidence maybe being knocked if he goes to a below par team, just to be able to say, I've gone to MotoGP and I've done it. I think he would rather Toprak stayed and was a dominant force in World Superbike. But then I was talking to my our friend Habib a couple of days ago, and he said, he has to go. You can't say you're the man. You can't be the best rider in the world and have that much talent and not pit it against the very best in the world. Superbike is Superbike and MotoGP is MotoGP. And he's got a point. If you look at, when I look at, Pata Yamaha's following, I think it's something like 140,000 or something followers. It's in the 100,000 bracket. You go and look at Yamaha Monster MotoGP, it's up in about 13 or 14 million.
Mm.
Yeah, so if you're going by following, and I think a lot of that obviously will be Rossi, the Rossi effect. He was a Yamaha guy for a lot of his career, so that would have helped for sure.
I think he needs to make the move. It's kind of it's whether or not it's finding the right ride for him in the class, because like you said, I think I would rather see him stay and be a strong contender, or be a multiple sort of championship winner in World Superbike than make the move to MotoGP simply to have done so, or just to be able to say that he's done so and take a ride on a subpar machine. I think that's counterproductive, because ultimately he'll probably end up going there for a season or two, not make it work. Then there won't be an offer to go to a top team, and then he'll end up probably back in Superbike. So rather than wasting, and then that's potentially a year, 2 years, 3 years where he could have been winning championships in Superbike. Yeah. So I guess it all depends on what seat is available for him. I think until Bautista retires, if he retires at the end of next season, I don't think he's going to win a championship again, because I don't think that Yamaha is going to deliver a bike that can, over the course of a season, can take enough points off of Bautista to win. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of a tricky situation, because he's kind of stuck in a no man's land, where if he goes to a shit team in MotoGP, he's not going to win. If he stays in World Superbikes with things as they are, he's not going to win. So where do you go? Which is the lesser of two evils? So, and given that he's basically got another season and a half of Bautista dominance to look forward to, if there is a decent ride that comes up at the end of this year, I think this would be the year to do it. And I wonder how much him and Kenan are sort of talking about that and thinking about that, because for me, I don't see anyone winning much of anything for the next season and a half.
Agreed.
Outside of Bautista, I think it's just going to be kind of similar to the mid 2000s with Schumacher at Ferrari. It's just going to be the Ducati and Bautista show, week in, weekend out. Who won this week? Oh, it was another Bautista triple, was it? Oh, okay, surprise! Who saw that coming? I think we're in for a period of that.
Right.
So,
well, now that we've brought the tone down, let's bring the tone back up, I'd say, and move over to certainly your favourite man of the moment, a certain
talking
Mr.
of the Ducatis,
Micheal Ruben Rinaldi. Yes, it's still Ducati based, but we've segued to their other rider now.
I've said this before, and I'm gonna preface it again. This is not a personal agenda that I have against Rinaldi. As a person, I actually
it definitely
as a
sounds
character,
like
as a person, I really quite like him.
He's likable. I like him.
He's a likable character. It's like, sometimes there's a rider or a driver that you get a bee in your bonnet about, and you can't stand them. It's not that. I really like him. He's just putting in some really subpar performances recently. And twice this weekend, he managed to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. I mean, he
okay,
made a point.
Let me ask you a question then. With Bassani, because I think I know the answer, so it's a bit of a rhetorical question. When Bassani goes past him, I think he goes past him into turn 1, or as turn 1 becomes turn 2 because it's right and then left.
It's almost like a bit of a chicane. Well, it is a chicane effect.
It is. Yeah. And then they go right again. Now, so Bassani goes past him. So when they go for the chicane and they bank over to the right, Bassani goes a bit wide, to be fair, but there's not a lot of gap there. He's not massively offline. And Rinaldi just sticks his bike as if to say, it was what I would call a go-karting pass, where especially when you've got the side pods and you can,
I remember
it doesn't
the
really
move,
matter.
Yeah.
And I just thought, oh, I tell you what, he's making if that's not Ronaldo, if that's not Bassani, if that's let's say that was Bautista or Toprak or Ray, is he putting that move on them? Because I don't think he is. I think he sees that it's Bassani and thinks, you cheeky fuck. Like you think you're coming for my ride? Now I'll show you what's what. And he's just put that move on him. And he knew exactly, I think he knew exactly what he was doing. I think he knew there'd be contact. I don't think he does it with the express intention of knocking the guy off, but I think he does it it's the kind of pass where you're leaving the guy
You're putting
the
a
choice
marker
of
down.
saying, yeah. And it's definitely 100% for me, live by the sword and die by the sword, because he got his comeuppance with interest.
Oh yeah.
I was pissing myself.
I mean, look, you never want to see anyone fall. I'm glad he was okay, and I think he did actually sort of say that one of his mitigating circumstances for why he lost so much pace towards the end of the race, because he had a quite handy, I think with a lap or two to go, he had a quite handy lead over Toprak, and he said,
yeah, but you're jumping from race one, which we're talking about, which is race one with Bassani. Was it either race one or the Super?
Well, yeah.
Was it the Super Pole race? I'll have to check. It was either race one or the Super Pole race. I think it was race one because I think he retired from the Super Pole race for Rinaldi.
Yeah, so he was citing his lack of long runs over the weekend because of his crash as mitigation for why he sort of lost his pace towards the end of race two, because he didn't, having not gone the full distance the previous day, he hadn't on that track and those conditions taken a tyre that many laps and known what to expect in terms of degradation towards the end. So he admitted as much, which I guess makes sense. But then conversely, you could say, because he would, because I think at one point he had about 1.5, 1.7 seconds on top block or something like that.
I have to admit at this stage, I had to leave the house on the Sunday, so I missed the vast majority of race two. I saw all of about 3 laps of the end of race two. So you've got me on this one. I've seen the race one and Super Pole race, not race two.
He wasn't miles ahead, but he had a bit of a lead. So I guess, he could have, he had enough of a, because it seemed like he sort of hit a tyre cliff at about 2-3 laps to go.
Right.
Up until that point, I mean, I guess, I don't know. Maybe it's just Rinaldi doing Rinaldi things. I don't know, but he just I think Bassani needs to get that ride next year.
We speak about this almost on each podcast,
because on a weekly, or on a not weekly, but whether it's fortnightly, on a round by round basis, race by race basis, he continues to prove that he probably on merit doesn't deserve to be on the factory Ducati.
I agree. But didn't you think his reaction was hilarious? Like, my man was sarcastically clapping. I was like, yeah, but dude, you just gave it out. You've got to be able to take it as well. It's just that Bassani gave it back to you, like I said, with interest. He was like, mate, you can get fucked.
I'm having your ride.
Like, I'm sticking this on you. And and I definitely think Bassani, I do think he meant to knock him off. I genuinely think he did. I think in that corner, it becomes a pinch point very quickly. It becomes a one line out of that bend. And it becomes, as you approach so they go left into turn 10, and then it straightens out into turn 11, which is a right-hander. And as they lay it down, I think there's only one way you can go. And I think he knew exactly what he was doing. So I think Rinaldi should have got a penalty for the first incident. And if you're going to give penalties out, now I don't like penalties, but if you are going to give penalties out, they both should have got one. Because I think Bassani did intend to take Rinaldi out. It was a pure revenge attack.
I'm rewatching it just to refresh my memory.
It was a pure revenge attack.
Because let's have a look. See here.
I have to say, I found this lying around, citrus pale ale, and I've been drinking it just because it's the only thing I've got. But it is utterly vile.
What is it you got there?
Really citrus pale ale.
Oh, that doesn't
It
sound.
is vile. I don't know why I keep on drinking it.
That I'd enjoy. Yeah, I mean, all right. So the Rinaldi move on Bassani, naughty move. That he pried the door. I'm rewinding it. He pried the door open. The door was not open.
He put the crowbar in basically, and
he put the crowbar in and sort of
jimmied the gap.
Yeah, that wasn't on, and realistically, I think he deserved like a one-place penalty for that or something, because that was a naughty move, and I dare say if it had not come off, then maybe the stewards might have investigated that and dished him out a penalty. Now let's skip forward to Bassani's contact on him.
Mate, it's a revenge attack. Nothing you tell me is going to convince me otherwise. It's pure revenge, which I don't condone, but I understand. Because I've been guilty of it when we've karted.
I think the contact... He wasn't being kind to him. I don't know if I'd call it a full-on revenge attack. I'll tell you why.
I think it was.
Because I'm watching it now, and it's so annoying that we can't share the because we're going to get an immediate copyright strike if we share the video.
The best we can do is share photos.
The best we can do is share photos
or screenshots
or whatever. I think he runs Rinaldi out wide with the intention of standing him up and compromising his line. Don't know if he means to take him out. Yeah, it was a naughty move. He's paying the favour back. Definitely. He is paying the favour because Rinaldi just straight up clatters him. This was like a gentle contact that, because he was right at the ragged edge, it's caused him to come off. I don't know that he meant to cause a...
All right, let me be kind and I'll rephrase, because it's quite a big thing to purposely knock someone off. I think it's one of those where he's done the move, and even if the express intention was not to take Rinaldi out, I think he's probably
I don't think he was sad when he saw him fall.
Put it this way, it's like following through with a tackle and thinking, well, I didn't mean to break your leg, but if it's broken, I don't like you very much. Tough shit type of thing.
Yeah, possibly. So yeah, I think
it's not the express intention, but I'm aware of what the potential consequences could be, and I don't really give a shit. That's basically what it feels like.
Yeah. And then,
I love it. And then
he got his comeuppance. He got his comeuppance. He did. I mean, to be honest, you've invited it when actually let's see this other angle from the front, because all the replays I was just watching was from behind, and they've cut to it at the point where they're contacting. Hopefully, they show it to us again with. No. Oh, actually, here we go. We're getting a view of it from the front. No, I don't think that was it. I think he thought he was going to make Rinaldi stand it up and compromise his exit, and I think it was. Yeah, I mean, given the way that Rinaldi absolutely uses him like a berm to bounce off of, when he's coming past, he got his comeuppance.
Yeah, I love the needle. This is what all motorsport needs. You know, nobody wants
a couple of riders with a bit of needle between.
Yeah.
I'm talking
because
of sort of.
Go on.
It wasn't quite needle, but it was sort of like a pissing contest that Ray tried to enter into with Toprak. Where was it? Race 1 that he crashed out. Or
No,
was it
I think it was race 2.
race
Let
two?
me
He
check
crashed
the.
it.
I think it was race 2. Let me check the.
He tried to enter
No,
into
or the Super Pole race. Let me check.
that's yeah. I can't remember which one it was now, but he tried to enter into a pissing contest with Toprak in terms of I'm not gonna because I think it was no, it would have been race 2 or Super Bowl because it was race 1 where Toprak snuck past him with a few laps to go and then got the second.
Yes.
So then I think it was either Super Bowl race or race 2.
It was the Super Bowl because I'm looking at I would have had my printouts, but my printer on almost once every 2 weeks, it just decides I'm disconnecting from the Wi-Fi and I'm going to have a Barney.
Yep.
So
printers doing printer things.
So I haven't printed that, but I can see it's the Super Bowl race and JR. So
he's
retires.
basically decided that because they were coming into, I don't know if you remember this bit, but they were coming into turn 1, and I think Ray in his head just said, "Bollocks! You're not doing me on the brakes this time round.
Yeah,
just not having
that's what it looked like. Yes,
it looked like he just went bollocks to you. I'm waiting until you break, and then when you break, I break, but I'm not breaking before you. Bollocks to it. If you can stop it, I can stop it." He tried to out top Toprak, and then he ended up on the Toprak. So
yes, very good. I like what you did there.
So for those of you that don't know, Toprak's name in Turkish means like earth, I guess, or ground.
Yes.
Earth. Yeah. So he tried to go to ground with Toprak, and it didn't work. To be fair, he
squirrely. It got all squirrely.
The second he touched the white paint,
that white line, that was it. And he actually looked angry with Toprak to me. Now, I could be being unfair.
He did.
I don't know what he's saying underneath.
He was gesticulating at first. He kind of, I think it was, and they said it in a commentary. They said they probably felt that he probably felt in the moment that Toprak could cause the accident, but
by not giving me enough room. But he had plenty of room.
He had the room, and he had to. I think it's one of those where he probably would have got back to the garage, watched a replay, and went, "Yeah, okay, he didn't cause that," because he sort of got up and sort of like was sort of gesticulating towards Toprak as if to be like, "You bellend, you've just not given me enough space,
taking my line." Yeah.
Well,
that made me doubt what happened for a while. Then I thought, let me go and watch that again, and I thought, no, Toprak's not moved over on him at all. There's space. He's just got too squirrely, and it's just unfortunately for him, just got a bit too close to the white line. Ultimately, you're the guy on the outside. Toprak had the high line. You're as the guy on the outside, you have to yield. And I think you're right. I don't think he wanted to yield. I think he was just making a point of saying, no, I'm not having it. I'm just going to lay it in front of you the minute I'm able to basically, I've done my heavy braking. I'm going to lay it in front of you. We'll see what happens, basically. So it's all head games.
I think so. Let's watch the replay of this again if they're going to show it. I can't find it quickly, but anyway, he just he tried to outbrake. If there's one person on the grid that you shouldn't try to outbrake, it's Toprak. You've got if he goes to the outside, he's because of. Well, you've then got the right, left, right. He could set himself up for an undercut through the fast right-hander, turn 3.
Yes.
Which I think, in hindsight, he probably wishes he'd done because you're poised to set yourself up for an undercut in that situation. But it's actually quite lucky the thing didn't catch fire because the petrol cap pops off and it's spilling fuel.
I never noticed that.
Yeah, no, it's spilling fuel. The petrol cap pops off as he crashes, and then he runs over to it. So, thankfully, that didn't turn into an ugly situation with fuel landing on a hot exhaust manifold or something. But,
that was a funny one. That just shows though how rattled he can get, and how it's sort of this changing of the guard. And before I forget, we should mention that second race to podium, the silver, second place for Toprak, that would have been Yamaha's 400th podium in the class. So that's quite a big deal. It'd be interesting to see the sort of distribution of of
I'm
wins
talking
there.
nonsense here. That replay that I was just watching was Assen last year. Why? Because it was posted by what the WS. Oh, hang on, I'm not reading properly. It was posted on the WSBK YouTube channel 2 weeks ago.
No, it can't be right.
No, that's not right. So why are they posting that from? I guess why are they posting a crash from last season? Yeah.
Well, anyway, I mean,
Anyway,
people
yeah,
can
we
look
know
at
what
that.
happened.
Yeah.
Watch it for yourselves and form your own opinions. To me, it looked like
For me, it's very clear cut. There's enough room. He should have yielded. He didn't. I think I agree with you. I think he wanted to make a point that I'm not, giving up despite you having the high line, and it bit him, unfortunately. I think before we wrap it up, just news today that
yes.
after a very, very ill-fated, what's turned out to be an ill-fated move, Tom Sykes has decided to, it would appear, I'm assuming by mutual consent. I don't think it's, I think it's been amicable. Tom Sykes has parted ways with Prochetti, and that has just gone from bad to worse. I mean, I think he's pretty much DNF'd due to mechanical failure or electrical failure every single race, bar a few. He's going to stand. He's going to be the stand-in temporarily, so they say, for Michael Vandermark, who you have to believe is out for the season.
Yeah.
And he's going to be teamed up with Scott Redding, who apparently, I was unaware of this, he had beef with online at the beginning of this season.
Yes, so, I also unaware of this as well. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what you just read?
Well, no, I mean, I haven't actually managed to find out. Like, I haven't managed to find whatever, because this was online beef, and I haven't managed to find out what this beef was. So I will try and find that out. But it's going to be interesting because obviously Scott's quite a chippy character, isn't he? Sort of well, to be honest, so is Tom. Tom, being a Yorkshireman, he speaks his mind. He doesn't give a shit. No. Scott is obviously Scott, and he doesn't really care. He says what he feels. It's going to be a very interesting team dynamic, and it will be. Let's see how Tom does, because that was his old stable. He rode for BMW. So what is going to make me laugh is if Tom goes there and gets up to speed and starts to outperform Scott, and you think, oh, that's going to make for a very interesting dynamic. And obviously, Scott's now making quite public noises about stepping away from BMW, in only in a way that only Scott does. He's very sort of forthright, and sometimes has a serious case of foot in mouth. So,
I think it's a really good opportunity for Tom Sykes to kind of go there. He's, like we say, he's probably going to get the rest of the season, which gives him a bit of time to get used to the machine, get up to speed, and potentially turn it into a full-time ride for himself. So I don't see, unless for example, Toprak was to leave the class, and then there's all of a sudden a vacancy.
There's a seat available, Yamaha.
Yeah. Or I don't see what other seat becomes available for him, because he's not a spring chicken anymore in terms of his racing career. So I don't know how many teams or how many sort of competitive teams are going to want to offer him a ride, knowing that he's probably only got, because how old is he now? 35.
Tom's got to be, if not mid-30s, then definitely pushing late, in his late 30s.
I'd say he's probably about 35. Tom Sykes' age. How old is he now? He's August 85, so 2 years older than me. That makes him 37. Yeah, so I mean...
so like I said, going into late 30s now.
Yeah, so...
He's not got long left.
He's not got a huge amount of time left, so he's either going to have to try and make it work on this on the BMW.
Well, it certainly can't be any worse than that Prochetti Kawasaki, which is bizarre because Prochetti obviously one of the reference team, certainly the reference Kawasaki team in Supersport.
Yes.
I just don't understand why is they're not able to I mean, I don't expect them to have a KRT bike by any stretch, but to be where they are is just embarrassing. It's nothing short of an embarrassment.
Yes,
So,
very embarrassing because obviously, the machinery that they're fielding in Super Sport is competitive machinery, done at the sharp end of the field. Whereas, what they're fielding in Superbike is, apart from the abject reliability woes, it's not quick when it is running.
yes.
I don't think a former world champion has suddenly got crap. So, it's realistically it's going to be the machine. So, yeah, good luck to him. I'd really like to see him do well on the BMW.
Me too. And yeah, on that, I won't call it a bombshell, but on that note, I think we can probably round it up for today. Apologies for the mid-session tech problem, but obviously I'll try and do my best on the editing production values there.
Cool.
Cheers for joining us as ever, guys. We are trying to obviously make this a bit more regular, so I think we're succeeding to a point.
We'll see how it goes. Cool. All right. Well, catch you on the next one, guys. Thanks for tuning in.
Cheers, guys. Take care.